Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're going to be beekeepers. You may remember on our home colony, we have a massive supply of uranium and a lot of bees to do the work of actually extracting that. We'll get into some of the education and why you want to use bees instead of the centrifuge, but we also need to kind of help the bees out a little bit, right? We're also going to try to discover where and when these bee tinies will plant beta hives. So the first thing we have to look at is the uranium centrifuge. This is the building found under radiation that is given to players to be able to refine uranium into enriched uranium. And why do we want enriched uranium? Well, that's what the research reactor takes. It will use 10 kilograms of enriched uranium per cycle. But what's key is the uranium centrifuge does it as 20% efficiency. It takes 10 kilograms of uranium ore and produces 2 kilos of enriched uranium. That's not great, and that's by itself is 20%. But we also know, just from being the experienced ONI players we are, if we go and dig up this 101 kilos worth of uranium ore, it's only going to give us 50 kilos in return. So you lose 50% of your mass anytime you dig something up. So in fact, what we would have originally considered to be 20% efficiency is actually only 10% efficient, because if you have a tile that has 100 kilograms and you dig it up with the intentions of putting it in here, it's going to cut it down to 50 kilos. If you take that 50 kilos of uranium ore, put it in the centrifuge, you're only going to get 10 kilos back. So what originally started as a 100 kilo tile ends up being 10 kilos of enriched uranium. And I don't know about you, but 10% doesn't sound like a great trade-off. That's where the adorable beta hives and bee tinies come into play. You'll see that this beta hive actually has enriched uranium in it. It has almost 3.5 tons of it because it's been doing it for most of the game. A beta will walk up to a tile of uranium ore and take 1 kilo out. It'll take that 1 kilo, put it inside the beta hive, and the beta hive will turn it into 900 grams of enriched uranium. That's a 90% efficiency, which is phenomenal. Remember when I said that each reactor would take 10 kilos per cycle? That means this one beta hive that's just naturally been running has enough enriched uranium for 340 cycles. That's not too shabby. But what's happened is the betas have mined out everything in their area. There is no way for them to get to any other uranium ore. That's where we can help. The same is not true for this beta hive. You can see it still has access to uranium ore. In fact, this beta just dropped off 1,000 grams of uranium ore. The beta hive takes it, eats it, and turns it into enriched uranium. So what can we do for this hive to make sure that these betas have access to more uranium? Well, we can actually carve out a lot of these tiles around it, and that way the betas have access to exposed uranium ore. What about the life cycle of these little guys? Betas themselves live for 5 cycles, and they are born from bee tinies. At the age of 2, a bee tiny will do one of 2 things. If there's no beta hive around, it'll turn into a beta hive. If there is a beta hive around, it'll turn into a beta. The question is, how far away does the bee tiny have to be in order to make a beta hive? Because the more beta hives we have, well, the more enriched uranium we're going to be able to harvest. We don't plan on creating research reactors immediately, but it would be awfully nice to have a huge stockpile of enriched uranium when we finally decide to do so. A couple of other considerations for our betas and bee tinies. Their comfort and livable range is very, very cold. They actually have to be in negative 0.1 to minus 100 degrees in order to stay alive. That's not a big deal, but it's the reason why we have to make sure things like the 60-degree chlorine gas vent are sealed up. Carbon dioxide also provides a problem for the betas. Whenever a beta is exposed to carbon dioxide, it puts them to sleep, and they will slowly absorb carbon dioxide when that is happening. And while right now you can see they don't actually put off a lot of radiation, a beta that is sleeping puts off a lot of radiation. There are some tricks that you've probably seen people use, and that's because betas can't see through doors. What folks will do is build a little room with doors, open all the doors, and that way the betas can fly in and out, but a bee tiny will actually put another beta hive right next to this one, and that's all fine and good. But for our experiment, I want to try to make this as natural looking as possible. So we're going to experiment with how far away a bee tiny has to be in order to create a beta hive. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, it's probably just separation by room. You can see this area is enclosed with 129 tiles, and there's only one beta hive in it. And I thought that was a decent theory as well until I saw this happen. You'll notice this is one continuous room. It's 255 tiles large, but there's nothing separating these two beta hives. And despite my best efforts of looking on the old internets, I couldn't find a range where these bee tinies had to be separated by from their beta hive in order to create another one. So we're going to play around with that a little bit. We also have a problem. Thanks to this cool steam vent, you can see that we have an abyssalite break. Now the abyssalite break wouldn't be a huge deal, except this is a cool steam vent that outputs 110 degree steam, and it's warming this area up slowly but surely. Now, it's still -2 in here, but throughout most of the uranium biome, most of the temperatures -50 something. So already this cool steam vent has heated this up about 50 degrees. So we want to get in there and seal it off. There's also this absolutely obnoxious magma vein. There's no volcano, at least that we can see. It's just a vein of magma, and it's heated this area up very, very nicely, which is also not good. So I think what we're going to do is try to seal up this cool steam vent, protect the area from this heat, and make a sort of tunnel right through here that connects these two uranium ore biomes. That way we can have one continuous bee sanctuary. The question is, where do we go in from? There's a couple of theories I'm thinking about. One, we can go in at the very top and work our ways down, or two, we can start at the bottom and work our way up. We're also going to need to be very, very careful. You can see smack dab in the middle of our uranium biome, we have a hot polluted oxygen vent at 500 degrees. We have a volcano at 1726. We even have a gold volcano at 2626. And while one day I want to get into there and work all of these, we don't want to mess with it until the bees have done their job of getting every last bit of uranium ore refined. So all things considered, I think we're actually going to start in the middle. There's a couple of reasons why. First, it's really close to our colony. But second, because there's 2 hives already available. And that way we'll have easy access to all the bee tinies we need. Now, through the course of the game, we've created a few doors here. We're going to seal these up with a couple layers of insulated tile. And then we're going to create a huge transportation network through this thing. But first, let's start with our awesome little entrance. Now, because I've been waiting for an excuse, we're actually going to use the old lead suits. Now, the lead suits don't actually do anything for bee stings because, yes, the bees will sting you, but they do prevent you from being radiated, which means the dupes that are in them aren't going to be really affected too much by the radiation, just in case we run into some bees that are, sleeping and putting out massive amounts of radiation. Plus, it's just a good excuse to use them. So I think we're going to enter here. Now, the difficult part is we're actually going to need the dupes to take off their atmos suits and then put on their lead suits. Let's see what we come up with. So in the meantime, I wanted to highlight a problem that we're dealing with right now on the colony, and it has to do with our beautiful ice pack here. If you remember, this ice block is responsible for cooling this tank and keeping our food into a deep freeze. Well, right now you can tell it's refrigerated, because as we're using this water for our bristle blossoms, more water is coming in through this liquid vent. Well, the liquid vent's being supplied by this cool steam vent, and when this cool steam vent goes off, it still ends up being pretty warm. So I think we're going to change the way this sort of works. If it gets serious enough, I'll put an AND gate on these two, and it basically says, hey, this pump can't pump until this thermosensor is below 25 and there's enough water. Another thing that's going to help us is right now we have crude oil inside this radiant liquid pipe that's used for cooling. We would rather have supercoolant, and one day we will. But we're taking our sweet time to get to space because, we got so much going for ourselves right here on this home colony. So right now, we're just going to turn the pumping off. We're going to let it stifle this cool steam vent, which is going dormant in 13 cycles anyways. Reason why is I didn't change this to 25 degrees until it's been in this active cycle. So the thermal aqua tuner really hasn't gotten an opportunity to really cool down this pool. And that's kind of what we need to do. We need to get it cold enough to where the cold water ends up overriding the hot steam, and then we're only pumping cold water. In the meantime, we're back to building a bunch of ice temperature shift plates to A, add more water in here, B, cool it down, and that way these doors can open back up and start freezing this water again. Another stopgap solution is this is the thermal aqua tuner that's running the chill being dumped into this pool. If we check its properties, we can see In the last 5 cycles, it's averaged 0%. That doesn't work for me. Let's make this a lot colder. Let's start off at minus 35. More chill might be able to help prevent this water from getting warm enough so it doesn't use too much of the chill in here. I might go down a little lower, maybe to minus 40, but you don't want to go much lower than that because the thermo aqua tuner chills your liquids by about 14 degrees and petroleum becomes a solid at minus 57. So we need to be careful. That's kind of the area we need to stay away from. All right, we got a nice little corridor here. You might be thinking it might be as simple as just putting some lead suits down. Unfortunately, if they're in Atmos suits, they would drop their Atmos suit, put on the lead suit, and then go do their business, come back, hang up the lead suit, but never put back on the Atmos suit. And then you have a world of problems. So step 1 is actually going to be taking off the Atmos suits. All right, here's our start. We got 4 lead suit docks made out of lead, of course, and then 4 Atmos suit docks, also made out of lead. Now, they all need oxygen, and lucky for us, oxygen is not a problem. The question is, which line do we take it off of? I think we'll go off our other suit dock. Now, it's not going to be too big of a deal because we're not actually going to be in those suits a lot. After the initial period, there's really not much work to be doing. Okay, what are we going to do here? Okay, better idea. We'll actually come off the input to this bridge. And what this will mean is it has to feed these docks before it'll feed our other docks. This will work out well, other than the massive amount of gas pipe spaghetti. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love spaghetti. It's one of my favorite foods. But gas pipe and liquid pipe spaghetti, not my idea of a good time. It really messes with my sense of neatness and organization. Now we also need to power them up. How much power do the lead suits take? Looks like they take 120 watts too. Now, I can't mess with this. All of this is being supplied by the power in our oxygen center. Other than this mess here, which we can actually get rid of now. This was me just injecting some water into our iron volcano. So we can remove that now, but everything else has to do with our oxygen. So I like to keep it on a separate network. But I think we can just grab one from here. This transformer here is not doing a lot. I love having 410 tons of lead. It's just such a great refined metal to work with. Additionally, I wanted to give an update. We have 70 tons of steel, mostly because we have so much lime due to the fossil, and there was a ton of fossil down here. We're still working through all of it. In fact, according to our beautiful resource tab, we still have 6 tons of fossil. Another update on our beautiful backup to the backup tanks. Here's our polluted water vent. It's already filled up a ton of polluted water. And here's our petroleum. This is how much excess, after we filled up 50 tons worth of petroleum in these liquid reservoirs that these petroleum generators are pretty constantly using. They're set on 90-70. And that's all while the hydrogen vent is still dormant. Once it comes back active, the hydrogen generators are going to take care of 95% of the power needs of the colony. You add in all the natural gas generators, this is why I'm not going to be concerned at all. I might throw in more thermo aqua tuners just for the giggles. We're also going to need to create some more suits. First, we'll start with some beautiful iron Atmos suits. We'll say 4, and we use iron now because we have an infinite supply of it because of our beautiful iron volcano. And now we need 4 lead suits. Now, lead suits actually take 10 kilos of glass, which you'd figure the Atmos suits would too, but they don't. 10 kilos of glass and 200 kilos of lead. Now, the cool thing is when you compare the basic Atmos suit, you can see that it adds plus 50 to insulation, minus 6 to athletics, gives you a plus 10 to digging things out with excavation, and a scalding threshold of 726. You compare that to our lead, it also has the plus 50 to insulation and plus 10 to strength, but it has a minus 8 to athletics and a plus 66% to radiation resistance. In fact, because this is plus 10 to strength and not just excavation, this actually means they can pick up more stuff too. So let's also create 4 of those. And then we also need to turn on repair lead suits. Now, repairing lead suits does also take glass. So let's create a little bit more backup glass, shall we? We'll start with 99. I wanted to show you the awesome animation when you click deliver suit. It actually opens the little door and puts the little suit symbol there. And we have them all completed. Everything's just taking a little while. We're still sitting on 13 dupes. I'd like to expand to at least 16 for right now. We're going to be able to go to higher based on how much food that we have. I mean, we're already up to 1.3 million. But I'm trying to be careful with who else we bring in the fold. And right now, I really want that Doctor Decorator. We can't build statues or do paintings. We can't even analyze artifacts without a good decorator. And every time I'm getting dupes that are just like blah. Like this one's a decorator. So I think about, hey, maybe we roll the dice, but they're also narcoleptic and trypophobia. You know what though? This is supposed to be hard mode, so let's roll the dice. Over to PowerShell we go. Let's see if we have any luck today. Up, enter, dupe number 2. All right, so we did get the decorator dupe. They're narcoleptic, they're trypophobic, so they won't be doing any digging, and they're biohazardous, which is not great. But at least we have a decorator. Now about a name. Who's an artsy superhero? What was that DC villain that liked all the plants and everything? One quick Google search later reminds me that it was Poison Ivy, which I suppose she's our first villain. I need to get better on adding villains. Or was I only doing heroes? Oh well, it's too late now. Welcome to the team, Ivy. Now, first thing we're going to do is make sure that Ivy can't leave. Already we have our 2 cooks. We tell them, hey, you're never going outside because that's just not in your cards. But we don't want Ivy to leave, at least right now. Eventually, she'll be able to do things outside the base, but we need to get that athletics up for a bit. Now, we're not necessarily going to do a dupe gym. We're just going to let her do some of the stuff around the base that needs to be done as well. Poison Ivy, you can work with Hulk on Shift 5. Right into art fundamentals you go. Now, we need her to get into aesthetic design, because under aesthetic design is where artifact analysis lies. And then in priorities, we'll just make sure she knows that her number 1 goal in life is decorating. So in the background, I've been randomly analyzing different vents that we're not ready to tame yet or just have no use for to grab those floppy disks. And because of those floppy disks, we've managed to knock out radiation refinement, new media to get access to the pixel packs, and then even hydrocarbon propulsion. That way we can start off with a small petroleum engine. Next, we're working on petroleum engine, which is way over here and it'll take 250. And it'll take a ton of floppy disks to be able to do. Most of these tier 4s are just 30. This one's 250. But wouldn't it be great? The first time we ever went to space, it was on the back of a petroleum engine. Now we can actually finish it off with the checkpoints. We can use the little graphic to realize, okay, the dupe is going to come in on the left side, drop their suit off, and then go pick up one of these lead suits, which means we need a lead suit checkpoint on this side. Looks pretty good. Let's see how long it takes him to finish that one. And just as planned, Thor took his suit off to go finish this up. And then he puts his suit back on. Now, we need to make sure the vacancy rules on this are correct. Duplicates are allowed to pass only if there's vacancy here. And also on this one. Perfect. I think they did a really good job with these lead suit docks. You can see where the oxygen level is and where the power level is. That's very cool. Now I guess it's time to start digging in and building our beautiful, what are we going to call this? A bee highway? Now the key when we're building through this is we don't actually want to touch any uranium ore. So it's not going to be as simple as just going straight up and straight down. Of course, the amount of work that it would take to kind of diagonally build around all of these, isn't it kind of worth it just to build one ladder rung up and down? Oh, and then we have this gold volcano in the way. And then if we try to build in the middle, we have this carbon dioxide geyser neutronium's in the way. Okay, we're just going to go in the middle. We don't want to dig all those up, do we? I know one thing we did wrong. We probably shouldn't have actually filled these with suits. They don't actually need them because they'd be bringing their own suits in. So why don't we just undock these suits? Here we go. Now there's actually going to be vacancy. All right, so this is the start of our new ladder system. We're also going to end up putting in a fire pole because they move kind of slow in those big old suits, and once a dupe's way up here, they might end up starving if they have to climb all the way back down that and then all the way back home. That might create some problems. So we'll put in a fire pole as well. This beta was starting to fly over here, so we're going to go ahead and put a manual airlock just in case. So because we're going to end up going through a couple of pieces of uranium ore, I wanted to explain what happens when a beta actually finds dug up uranium ore. Instead of only grabbing 1 kilo, they can actually grab 10 kilos when it's already dug up. And then they'll bring the 10 kilos over to the beta hive and it'll become 9 kilos of enriched uranium. Still the 90% efficiency, but for those tiny little pieces, it actually becomes 45% efficiency because we lost half the mass by digging it up. But I think the convenience of having an entire route through our natural beehive will pay dividends. Since we're already here, we're actually going to help this beta hive out. You can see it says disabled, and it's because some of the snow fell and actually entombed it. So by digging this up, it won't be disabled and it'll start producing bee tinies again. And refining this uranium ore. You can see some of the bees have been dropping off uranium ore, but because it was disabled, it wasn't actually able to enrich it. Is that what we're saying? It enriches it? And this is an example of what we're going to be doing. Right now, there's not a lot of uranium around. In fact, there isn't any in range of this beta. So this beta hive has food supply low. Well, there's some nice uranium here, but it's covered up. So we can dig it out. And that way, the beta will have access to uranium and start delivering it back to the beta hive. All right, we're going to roll the dice again, and I really hope the thing doesn't come up with the number 2 again. This is Bubble, Nails, and Frankie. Frankie could be our doctor. They're only negatives. They don't know how to dress, and they don't want to do any attacking. So I'm really hoping for a number 3. If we get a number 1, well, we have another rancher. Not too bad. If we get a number 2, we're going to hang our heads in shame because we'll have another bottomless stomach dupe. Back to PowerShell. Good luck, have fun. Dupe number 3, we got it! Oh, that's a little fortune of good luck. Now, who else is a doctor? Oh, I know the perfect one. Of course, Doctor Strange, if I remember correctly, dressed pretty well, and he doesn't mind attacking people, but this works well. Welcome to Max Paradise, Doctor Strange. And once again, for now, we'll make sure that Doctor Strange can't pass right through this door, and we'll give him access to medicine compounding, which means we can start using the apothecary. Oh, what are we going to make first? This is so exciting. Now, when you're looking at the medicines, you can see each one does sort of a different thing. The immuno booster, we don't actually have the supplies for it. It takes a pinch of peppermint, but it reduces the chance of them contracting a germ-based disease. Okay. Vitamin chews do the same thing, but they do it on a smaller scale. Allergy medicine, we know what that does. Curative tablet actually cures them of food poisoning. The rad pill speeds up the rate that the duplicate body absorbs radiation. The medical pack cures slime lung and other diseases, and the serum vial just does a little bit better. That one takes steel and a somnum egg? Oh, that's excessive. I guess just because. We're going to start making some vitamin chews, huh? Let's start with 99 vitamin chews. Oh, wow, this is definitely a slow process. There's one vitamin chew, and it looks like Star-Lord's going to take it. Is he really going to spend this whole time eating a vitamin chew? Oh, wow, that is definitely not a productivity gainer, huh? Where is Star-Lord in his schedule? He's doing his normal work schedule as well. The half-life on a vitamin chew is infinity cycles, so we can just put all the vitamins right here. Put them in a nice little ration box, huh? That way we can waste a lot of duplicate time. Okay, if our hospital couldn't get any better, we now have a pharmacy. We have this ration box. It's what holds all of our medicine. The dupes come, they get their medicine out of the ration box. They eat them right here by this flower pot. And there's even some windows you can see in for visiting hours. It's got some beautiful decor because we even commissioned a painting. Now, leave Poison Ivy alone. It was the best she could do. Our hospital is now complete with our laboratory, our ER, our ICU, and our beautiful pharmacy. An update on our beta hive that we dug back out. It's already produced 3 bee tinies, but I don't think this ramp is far enough away. You can see this one bee tiny just turned into a beta. I was hoping that maybe way over here they would create a beta hive. What I was talking about before is you can put doors all around this, just like this. And that way the bee tinies, they can't see on the outside, so they'll actually put another beta hive. I don't want to do that. If we have to, we'll resort to it, but I'd rather leave like the natural look around here. So we'll see if any of the bee tinies, maybe we'll create one over here. Otherwise, we'll move some bee tinies. Another job for our duplicates is actually going to be to harvest the enriched uranium out of the beta hive. When we have an example of how that looks, I will have to show you because it is just as ridiculous as a lot of the other animations. What stinks is the act of harvesting from a beta hive is actually a ranching errand, and we don't have a ton of ranchers. Now, so far, I don't see a limitation, so anybody may be able to do it. It's not like the grooming station that you have to be skilled in ranching, but the issue is only our ranchers are going to see that high priority, and chances are they're going to be the first ones to come and do it, taking them away from our critters. Oh, here comes Venom now. Pulls out an ice cream scoop. Now, normally it does it from the front, but I guess it's doing it from the back now. Maybe it's because he's in a lead suit. And for our efforts, we now have access to 2.6 tons of enriched uranium. I think we can actually disable that for now. If they do it in one fell swoop like that, we can wait a while before they actually do it. And then we set up a few storage bins here. This is where we're going to hold all of our enriched uranium for now. Now, the beta hives are 2 by 3. So I believe they can be built in anything that's 2 by 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to carve out an area that's 2 by 3, like this one right here. Doesn't actually touch any uranium. And then we're going to drop a bee tiny there and see if it'll create a beta hive if this is far enough away. Because right now, this is not, apparently. All right, step 1 in this process is going to be putting a critter drop off to drop off a bee tiny here. Then we'll delete the critter drop off and see if the bee tiny turns into a beta hive. All right, this bee tiny is 1. Do we have any younger bee tinies? All right, we're gonna have to use this one. The other bee tiny right now is 2. So we'll wrangle this one, select bee tinies over here, and see how that goes. And we have to make sure this is all done before that bee tiny transforms. All right, Hawkeye is wrangling the bee tiny. All right, Wonder Woman has the bee tiny and is coming to drop it off. We're gonna put the deconstruct command on, because this thing has to be deconstructed to make enough space for a beta hive. And apparently this was not a good enough spot or not far enough away, because this bee tiny just turned into a beta. So right now we know a distance of about 16 tiles works. This was 11 tiles, maybe 10 tiles. Let's try one a little further away. Here's an example of a sleeping beta. You can see there's carbon dioxide in here, but this beta is consuming 100 grams per second. But the radiation they're putting off is pretty significant at 141 rads per cycle. Now, it's not necessarily going to kill a dupe. They'll just end up peeing it out the next morning, but still something to keep in mind. The beta hive actually puts out radiation too when it is enriching the uranium, and it gets a lot higher. You can see this tile here is 323 rads per cycle. But I think this one might be bugged because it keeps consuming the uranium ore, but it's not actually producing any enriched uranium anymore. So I gave it a reload, and when it came back, it turned into a beta hive, but not before incubating a little bit. But there's all the enriched uranium. Just seems like it was bugged out a little bit. And I suppose that's the reason why you want your dupes into lead suits, as that is a lot of radiation when they're working in and around that. Especially considering it's pulsing, you know, you just don't want them to mess with that. It'll stop as soon as it's done enriching that uranium. For instance, this one's got almost 4 tons of enriched uranium, but because it doesn't have any uranium that it's working on right now, it's not actually pulsating. Alright, the bee tiny I put into this area has also turned into a beta. I'm starting to wonder if the only reason why this beta hive came alive is because this one was entombed, so it wasn't being recognized. Because that's a significant distance away. So I tried putting a bee tiny down here, and it still didn't work. And it's further away than this hive is to this hive. Now I am starting to think that they look within the room to see if they can build. So we're going to do another test and just close this off with a room. And then once we have the room built, then we can remove the door and let that beta hive do its thing. Another weird little problem is I've dug everything around here so there's exposed uranium ore, but this beta hive is still sitting idle, and I'm wondering if it's because of the range. They've managed to core out a pretty circular area, and I'm wondering if that is the limitation. But so far, our beehive superhighway is working just great. We've got our fire poles and our ladder going all the way through it. We were very careful as we built these little reminders of where our tunnels go, of making sure we don't remove any unnecessary uranium ore. And there you have it. This bee tiny is turning into a beta hive, all because I put this door here. So now we can remove the door and it'll start spawning bee tinies that'll turn into bees and start getting rid of the uranium over here. There's stage 2 for our little beta hive. There's stage 3, and you can see the bee tiny's head is gonna kind of convert into the cavern itself. The last stage it has, you can see they're trying to poke out the skin here, where it has these little hive clusters. And then the circle of life continues. The beta hive has produced a bee tiny who will turn into a bee and then start feeding this beta hive. We've managed to get another one being produced over here. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the background for the next few episodes, is just continuously moving all these beta hives around. Now that we've got it figured out, we do things like just throwing a bee tiny in an area, removing everything there so it has the 2x3 space to drop a beta hive, and then we move on. Here's another one here. We added 2 here. So what started off only having 3 beta hives, we now have 8, and that will just keep growing. So I hope you learned all you need to about bees and bee tinies and beta hives here in ONI. I hope you had a good time doing it. I know I did, and I'll talk to you soon.